there's two ways, at least, maybe more, to evaluate a program, to interpret a program. So in the pure lambda calculus, which is what we did before the break, right? How did we evaluate lambda calculus expression? So to evaluate or to interpret, remember in the lambda calculus, all we can interpret are function calls. So the function calls look something like this in the lambda calculus, but now I'm going to write them in slang 1 version. So the function of x that returns, let's say we're going to do plus x1. So this is the add 1 function, right? So make sure you're familiar with the slang 1 notation now. This is exactly like lambda calculus, but easier to read. So this is the function of x that returns x plus 1. So let's apply it to 3, right? So this is a valid slang 1 program. How do we interpret that? Well, it's a function call. So we could do substitution like we did in lambda calculus. So we could say, to interpret this, we return the value of what? Of the body of the function, so the plus x1, after substituting what? The argument for the parameter, after substituting 3 for x in it, meaning in the body. This is one way to build an interpreter. This is what we've been doing so far. It's based on substitution. So the value of a function call is whatever the value of the body is. So you evaluate the body and you return its value here, but not right away, only after you've substituted x, 3 for x. So this will be 3 plus 1, which is 4. Everybody remember this substitution algorithm? But this is not the way we're going to interpret slang, because this is not the way that most interpreters are built in the real world. Even though it works to do substitution, it's too slow. So we're going to use a different way of building an interpreter. So I want you to see both ways. So again, to interpret the same program, we're going to do it a different way, or any program for that matter. So to interpret this program, what we're going to do is we're still going to return the value of the body of the function. I mean, that doesn't change, right? The value of a function call is always the value of the body here, except we're not going to substitute the argument into the body. We're going to compute the value of this body in an environment, and this is the main topic I want to introduce now before we do the interpreter next Friday, in which x is bound to the value 3. So if that doesn't make sense yet, I just wanted to write it down cleanly. This is a second way of building an interpreter. So here is what I mean. Let's say you want to evaluate this, this function here, this function call. You could either go ahead and physically substitute the 3 for the x, and then evaluate the resulting string plus 3, 1. Another way to do it, which is much faster, is you're going to take the body like this plus x1 without substituting anything. And you're going to evaluate it directly. And every time you see a variable, every time you see a 1, you know what the value of 1 is. You just return 1. But when you see a variable, you say, well, what's the value of x? And so you're just going to look up that value in a data structure that knows what the value of x is. And this data structure is called an environment. So this is the way that interpreters are actually built. Think of it as a hash function, right, or a mapping. You're going to have a data structure that remembers that x right now has the value 3. So we say that x is going to be bound or associated with the value 3 inside that data structure called an environment. So we're going to assume that we have this data structure that knows what the value of x is. It's going to record that x is as the value 3. Or we're going to say x is bound to 3. Now, where is that data structure going to come from? Well, obviously, we're going to build it as we evaluate the program. In particular, when we evaluate this function call, right, we know that the parameter x corresponds to the argument 3. So at the time we evaluate this, before we evaluate the body, we're going to add a new entry into this environment where we're going to bound x, the parameter, to 3, the argument. So this is where that data structure is going to come from. It's not going to be magical. We're going to build it. But before we evaluate the body, we're going to update it, the environment, by adding this new entry for x bound to 3. And then when we get into the body and we need the value of x, we're just going to look it up in that data structure, this environment. It's exactly the same. In a way, it does the same thing as substituting 3 for x, but we don't have to do the substitution, which is actually pretty slow. We're just going to look it up in a hash table. So we're going to put an entry in the hash table for x, where the value of x will be 3. And then every time we need x, we'll just look it up. I say hash table because I know that's what you use in other classes, like in data structure. So you know what a hash table is. Now in JavaScript, we're going to go even simpler than that. We're not going to use a hash table. We'll use something else. But that's the idea of the environment. It's just a mapping. It's a mapping of variables to values. So everybody understand the difference between doing a substitution. So when you get into the body, you don't have an x anymore. You just have a 3 right away. So you don't have to look up anything. You just see a 3 and you just add it to 1. That's what we did in the lambda calculus. Now we're going to forget about this substitution-based model of interpretation. Well, not for the exam, but for the rest of the semester, we're going to skip this. And we're going to instead use another way of, so we're going to replace the substitution model with the environment-based model. And the environment is just a data structure that remembers, it's like a set. If you don't want to think of it as a hash table, think of it as a set. It's the set of bindings of a variable to a value. So it's a set of pairs. So you would say, look, x is bound to 3. That's one pair. And maybe y is bound to 5, and so on. And together you put that into a set, and boom, that's your environment. Except we're not going to use pairs. We're just going to use arrays. So we're just going to do arrays of arrays. So since I don't want to teach you any kind of objects or anything fancy in JavaScript, because we don't need to, everything is going to be arrays for us. So it's going to be a lot easier, even though it might be a little harder to read. So for example, here is a concrete example. An environment is going to be an array. And if the environment is empty, if we haven't seen any variables yet, then we'll have an empty array. But on the other hand, if we know that the variable y has been assigned the value 4, we'll have this entry in the environment, pair y4, where y is a string, namely the string, whatever string we saw in the parameter here, and then the value will be whatever it is. Like in this case, it's an integer. So in this environment, we're going to say y is bound to 4, x is bound to 5, meaning y as the value 4 right now in this environment, and x as the value 5, and f as another value, by the way. So what values can we have in slang 1? Well, remember in lambda calculus, the only values we have are functions. But in the slang, we have functions and integers because we added integers as a built-in data type. So here, this is an integer value, but this is a different value. This is a function. So we're going to say the variable f is bound to whatever function that is, like the squaring function. Now notice I put this in angle brackets because we don't know what that is yet. We'll discuss that next on Friday. But you know what an integer is, right? So at least we can use that. But what is the value of a function? Anybody remembers what is the value of a function in a functional programming language? What is this angle bracket here that has a name? How do we represent a function inside of an interpreter?
Is it a closure?
Exactly right, a closure. So that's what we're going to talk about on Friday. Don't worry about it now, but I wanted to remind you. All I want to talk about here is what is an environment? Let me summarize. An environment is a set of variable value pairs, or a set of mappings, or a set of bindings. We say that y as the value 4, so it's a pair, variable value in brackets. That's an array for us, right? So y is bound to 4, or y as the value 4. X as the value 5, or x is bound to 5. F as the value, whatever that closure is, or f is bound to that closure. So you take those pairs, you put them together into an array, and that's called an environment. So to make a link here, what that means is if you were evaluating this function call in an empty environment, let's say you start with nothing. How do you evaluate this function call? You're going to evaluate the body, right? You return the value of the body, but before you evaluate the body, you're going to add a new entry to your environment because the parameter is x and the argument is 3. When you evaluate the body, you have to remember that x is bound to 3 in this particular case. So in the environment, there will be a binding for x to 3. So you're going to evaluate this function in this environment. So when we get here and you see an x, you don't know what x is, so you look it up in the environment. This is the environment. Oh, x is 3, so you put 3 here and then you add to 1. So everybody understand what an environment is conceptually. It's just an array of bindings. And the reason we want to do that is because that will allow us to avoid substitution altogether. Now, there's one more complication, though. What if you have something like this in your programming language? Now, this is in JavaScript, right? But we can do the same in slang. What if you have a function of x and y? Remember, every function defines a scope, right? So we're going to have a scope for this function xy. And a scope is very important here because every time you enter a new function, you enter a new scope. And basically, every scope is going to have its own environment. Why? Because when you define a new function, you have two new variables that are usable now, the x and the y. So you see why every time you enter a new function body, you have a new scope. And therefore, you need to define a new environment where everything that was defined before is still there. But now you have two new variables, x and y. So you're going to define a new variable, a new environment when you enter this function where x and y has some values. And then when you enter the body, you're going to start executing this and you realize, wait, I'm returning a new function. So I need to build a new environment right here after they enter the function. And so I'm going to have two environments, the one for this function and the one for this one. And then, by the way, this returns another function. So when I enter this function, I'm going to need a third environment. So everybody understand why we need a different environment for every function, because every function has its own variables, its own scope. And so we can have three environments, first of all. That's the first thing to realize. And not only that, but these environments are not independent of each other, right? Because when you enter this function here, when you're right here in the middle, in the inner function, can you access y and z? Sure you can, because they are defined right here. But because this scope is inside the scope of this one, you still can access the x. So in this function here, you can access the y, the z, but also the x. And if there was other variables here, you could still access those. So what that means is that the environments have to be nested inside each other, right? This inner function here has an environment, and this environment has to be nested inside the environment for this function because you still need to be able to access this x. And this environment will be nested in the environment for this one, and so on and so forth. So this is to explain, this is all I want to do before we end today, is to explain this environment data structure that has a bunch of nested environments inside of it. That's the way we're going to need to do it. So it's a little bit more complicated. There's just not one environment like we drew right here. It could be an environment for every function, and because functions can be nested, then environment can be nested. So let me clarify the structure of this environment for us. It's going to be an array, but actually, it's not going to look exactly like this. First of all, we always have a tag, so we're going to have an environment label. So we know it's, so because everything is an array, we need to know what's an environment from what's something else, right? So we have an environment env tag, and then the second element is going to be the set of bindings, like what I showed right here, right? So these are the bindings. So in this environment, x is bound to 1 and y is bound to 2 and so on. And then we're going to have a third element, which is what? Which is going to be another environment, which is the one that this one is nested in. So whenever you see, this is the way our data structure is going to look like. First, you have a label, a tag, so we know it's an environment. Then we have, okay, what are the variables that are defined in this environment? Newly defined, like x and y, whatever. This is whatever was right here. But because an environment E can be inside another environment, we're going to put the old environment inside of this one. So E is nested inside this one. This is the outer environment, right? The one that E is inside of. So if this is it looks complicated, look at the code. Well, when you start right here, let's say the environment is empty. So we have this special case of the empty environment. This is a bracket with a special label that says, okay, I start with nothing. So now you enter this function at runtime. Now you have a new environment where x and y are bound to what? Well, whatever you called that function f with. So here we call f with 1 and 2. So x will be bound to 1 and y will be bound to 2. So notice here we have a new environment right here where x is bound to 1, y is bound to 2. And the third argument is whatever environment was active at the time you entered this block. Well, it was that yellow one, so it's this one. So the red thing is the environment for this f function. And then say you enter this one. You still have this environment active, this red one, but you're going to wrap around it a new environment where x is bound to whatever the, this is called with. So here, x is going to be bound to the string high. Now, we don't have string in slang, but here I'm doing it in JavaScript, right? So everybody understand this green environment here is the environment after you have already x, y, and x. But remember, the x is at the front. So if you look for x in here, it will look up this one before this one because this one is hidden by this one. So this is why the x is here before you get here. And finally, when you get to this function, you have y and z that are bound to whatever those two things are. And so you get this new environment here. And you see how the yellow environment is inside of the red one, and the red one is inside of the blue one. They're inside in the code, right? But in the data structure, I should say. But in the code, it's the other way around, right? The yellow one is the global one. Then the red one is, for the f function. So do you see why it's reversed? Is because when you're going to look, so right, when you're evaluating this code right here, you need the value of x. You're going to look it up in this environment, and you're going to say, oh, is x defined here? No. So I'm going to look into the outermost or the next environment, which is going to be inside here. I'm going to look in this one. And then you're going to find this x, which will be this one. It's exactly what you want. So I'm going to leave you on that. This is something you need to think about for Friday, because on Friday, what we're going to do is we're going to implement this data structure. Right now, I'm just telling you what it looks like. But we do have to write the code that's going to create it and query it. So are there any quick questions, since time is up, on why we need an environment, namely to remember the values of variables, and why we need to nest those environments inside each other, because we have nested functions or nested scopes?